This is The Record Collectors with the Gruesome Twosome, Mike Adams and Chris Savory.
You're listening to Mike Adams and Chris Savory, The Record Collectors from the BBC between now and 9 tonight.
Well, I guess now on The Record Collectors, Mike Darbo, a gentleman whose records we've played a few times in the past, especially Invitation. The band was a band of angels. So, Mike, could you start by telling us, how did you get into the music? Because I believe it was while you were actually at school at Harrow. Is that correct?
Hi, Chris. You're absolutely right. I'm very impressed because, you know, this is one of the important records in a way for me, because directly through that record I got to join Manfred Mann, but that's another story. Anyway, yes, we all went to Harrow, and I think we sort of formed in 1960, and I was sort of the keyboard player and occasional vocalist. And we all used to put all our instruments in a little amplifier that was the size of this little tape recorder here. And vocals and bass and guitar and everything went through that. And we used to play occasionally in the school speech room before film societies, which was like the school film show. And I think we actually trimmed down over the years from 5 to 4, and we changed drummers a bit. But our very first record deal was 64, where John Barry was our producer, just slightly prior to making fame as the Bond music man. And we had a deal with United Artists. We put out Me, Not True As Yet, She's Gonna Make a Woman of You, and a Neil Sedaka song. Neil Sedaka was coming off the boil a bit, called She'll Never Be You. Then we got, I don't know whether we got dropped, but we actually got a record deal with Decca, where we were produced by Gus Dudgeon, and nothing was ever released. Dick Rowe tried to talk us into recording Chapel in the Moonlight, which he finally got the Bachelors to do some years later. And we didn't think that was quite right for us. And as you can hear, there's a Manfred sound check going on, but we shall ignore that. Then our last record deal was with Piccadilly, which was really pie. John Schroeder was our producer, and we did 2 records, one which was not Liebenstoller, a Pomus and Schumann song called Leave It to Me, which actually featured the other singer, Johnny Gaydon. And the final record we made was my song, Invitation, and it was a sort of soulful record in a way. And actually, in one chart, the Melody Maker chart, I think it showed up at number 49 briefly for a week.
It became very, very popular, and I mean, a single now, this would probably be worth about £25, demonstration copy about 40. But it begs the question, is there any other Band of Angels stuff, either on Piccadilly, Decca, or other labels, that hasn't seen the light of day?
Not really. I think I've talked about all the stuff that was ever recorded. I mean, the important ones for me were B-sides, one called Too Late, My Love, which I wrote. Too Late, My Love, I remember liking that one. And another thing that I was very proud of, which was also a B-side, called Gonna Make a Woman of You, which was out and out sort of rock and roll, me trying to be John Lennon or Paul McCartney. In fact, really what we were trying to do, everyone was trying to imitate the Beatles in 64 or so. But the important thing about Invitation was that the Manfreds, or to give them their proper name, Manfred Mann, were on this record, a TV show called A Whole Scene Going, as were the Band of Angels. And they saw me, because actually when they arrived, we'd already just recorded our bits, so it was rather like seeing a video playback, and they looked up and they thought, oh. And it actually featured me 90% on vocals. The middle 8 is sung by the other singer, Johnny Gaydon, who, between you and me, wasn't up to the vocal. You know, I'd rather have sung the whole thing, but still, we were dividing it, sharing it out, you know. And Manfred came up to me and sort of sidled up and said, you know, I quite like that record, it's quite good, you know, you sing that quite well. What's your phone number? How about giving me your phone number? Which I didn't. I thought, well, what do you want my phone number for? This is rather a bit previous, you know. And he said, well, really what we're thinking of doing is forming an agency to get work for bands, and we think we might be able to get you some work. And sure enough, within a week he did phone, and sure enough that led to me actually joining the band. So that record was important. But I think, to answer your full question, just about everything we recorded has been released, with the exception of one demo we made in 1961, which featured Carey Harrison on saxophone, who was Rex Harrison's son.
Just ask you about the start of your songwriting, because you've been very successful. Yeah, you wrote the score to A Girl in My Soup, which featured Peter Sellers and Goldie Hawn, and also Bill Me Up Buttercup, which was a massive hit, was another one of yours. Glad Rags and Handbags, was it?
Or the other way around.
The other way around, the other way around perhaps, yeah. And Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is the start of your composing period, was it?
Well, in a way, I was always doing it. In fact, I've been reminded just over the last 24 hours of another song that Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells recorded called When the Sun Comes Shining Through, which was also a minor hit for Long John Baldry, actually. And there have been other things, the TV jingles, but it actually all started when I was at Harrow, because I actually wrote a review, and I was writing songs around the age of 15 or 16, which was slightly in the Noel Coward idiom, you might say, which is not too surprising, really, because I was brought up in those sort of traditional theatrical traditions, really. And my mother was a keyboard player, and she played everything in E flat, I remember, and she was very much into the standards, you know, Fred Astaire and Cole Porter and Gershwin and all that. So I was hearing the pop music of the 50s and also hearing my mother's standards that she was playing. So I was quite sophisticated in my knowledge of chords from quite an early age. In fact, my big problem has always been writing things simple enough. If I listen back to some of my early songs, they were too complex because I knew too many chords. And really, to write a hit like, say, A Wild Thing or A Twist and Shout, or, you know, those sort of dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum, the 4-chord sequence, you've got to keep it simple and have the magic and the fairy dust within that simple format. And I was possibly too complex, too sophisticated, if I can find fault with my writing.
You joined Manfred Mann. I mean, you say that Manfred actually asked for your phone number and then rang, and that was how you got into Manfred Mann. Was there a transition period between you joining and Paul leaving, or what was the exact situation there?
Yeah, yes, that's a very good question. It was very awkward. It seemed to go on forever, because the first lunch that we had as a result of me leaving the phone number with Manfred, I remember meeting Tom and his wife, Tom McGuinness and his wife, and Manfred and his wife, and I think the wives were there to size me up, you know, to sort of assess me on a womanly basis. And I think I came over as dead cocky, actually. You know, a bit too pleased with myself, possibly. But anyway, they seemed to like me. And so I knew I'd passed the initial audition, and after that it was, could I really sing? Because they came to hear the Band of Angels, and they said, well, you're the best thing in it. We don't reckon much to the band. And then I had to sing some songs which I didn't really like, which were hug man songs. Because really, just to change the subject for a moment, the band had started as the Man Hug Blues Brothers, and now Paul was out of the frame. It was back down to Man and Hug doing their thing, but they knew it was too early to go back to jazz roots, so they were trying to write these pop songs. I did my best to sing them. I didn't really rate them necessarily. And then I think through process of elimination, I figured I probably got the job, but I had to hang on. I was sworn to secrecy, and Paul was committed to about 3 months' worth of Sunday concerts in Blackpool. So I was probably contacted in April or May, perhaps, and it was let's say it was probably earlier. It was probably January or February, and I didn't actually get the official nod until June of '66, when Paul had finally done his last, or was very close to doing his final concert in Blackpool. And I'd already recorded Just Like a Woman, and we'd recorded about 4 or 5 tracks. One of them, in fact, with Jack Bruce, who was still the bass player. And in fact, I picked him up from a rehearsal, and he said, who are you? And I said, I'm the new lead singer. And he said, oh, right, in that case, I definitely am going to form my new trio with 2 friends of mine who turned out to be Ginger Baker and Eric Clapton. And so I had this very awkward period where I couldn't tell anyone about it, but obviously I was. And in fact, I couldn't even tell the Band of Angels. The official party line from Manfred and his solicitor was, tell the Band of Angels you're leaving the business. Tell them you're disillusioned. And I couldn't do that. I can remember the final night, Stamford Drill Hall it was, when they'd said to me every weekend, you know, they said, you've got to tell your band that you're leaving this weekend. Have you told them yet? And I said, no, but I promise I will this weekend. We had Stamford Drill Hall, and Twinkle we were her backing group, Dear Twinkle. And we had a bit of a problem because she was under time on her allotted time. She was due to do 40 minutes, could only do 30 minutes. She feigned fainting, and we thought we'd got away with it until the manager walked in and saw us all corpsing in the dressing room. And so then people demanded their money back, and we fled to the pub across the road. And, you know, people banging on the door saying, we want our money back, and it was a very ugly scene. And that was the night I had to tell the band. I said, look, guys, I'm leaving the group. Why? I said, well, look, I meant to tell you that I'm disillusioned with the business, but actually I'm going to join Manfred Mann. And to the man, to each man, they said, well done, that's great. They were really supportive. They were proud of me.
They were gentlemen, weren't they?
They were. And so eventually, then I told them, and I remember I was recording Jordan Christopher. Now, Jordan Christopher was the husband of Sybil Burton, who'd recently divorced Richard Burton. And he was trying out a singing career. He was recording one of my songs, and I was co-producing him. And I got this call in the studio, the old Olympic studios. They said, Darbo, the news is broken today. We want you right now at the press conference in this big theatre in Tottenham Court Road, the Dominion Theatre. And I literally walked in there, and there was hundreds of journalists there. The cameras were flashing, and there was Manfred and Paul Jones, and we had this photo session. Yes, it is now official. Darbo's joined. I was then Michael Darbo. I became Mike Darbo, but I always saw myself as Michael Darbo. Paul and I shaking hands with Manfred, you know, ring out the old, ring in the new, and that sort of thing. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, late June of '66. We put out Just Like a Woman a week later, and it went top 10.
It seemed to be, from the spectator's point of view, for me reading the music press and the things I read in the newspapers, a pretty seamless exchange. And you and Paul are almost lifetime friends now. But it appeared to be very well orchestrated, the whole changeover. And the continuation of Manfred's success, of course, it went on and on.
Yes. Well, three immediate reactions. First of all, I was not chosen because I looked like Paul, which a lot of people thought. Obviously, I've got a lot less hair now. And I'm really not like him at all. He's a lot taller. We sing quite differently. We're quite different personalities. We do coexist very well. I mean, we actually have a lot in common, funnily enough. You know, there's a very nice relationship on stage. I think the bonus for people who come to hear the Manfreds in the 90s is that you get two lead singers for the price of one, in a way. Secondly, I did feel that I was taking on an impossible job because he was so popular, and I saw him front the Manfreds in the 60s, and I thought, that's an impossible act to follow. I wasn't half as polished in many, many areas. I didn't feel half as good, but I did feel I've, over a period of time, carved out my own identity. And thirdly, the other point I wanted to make is, even though their singles were pretty poppy, their albums and their basic reputation was based on R&B. By the time I joined, I was actually a rock and roll singer. I wanted to sing Long Tall Sally, Blue Suede Shoes. I loved the Beatles. I saw myself as a Lennon or a McCartney type singer, and I was given these silly songs to sing. I was told to sing Semi-Detached, Ha, said the clown, my name is Jack. And I think we became a very much more lightweight pop group, but it was successful. I was delighted to see us ride up the charts. I was proud of the opportunity I got, but it wasn't musically the same band, and that wasn't of my choosing. That's the way it was dictated to me.
Mike, can I ask you, on stage when you're performing, do you sing your hits with Manfred and Paul sings his hits with Manfred, or do you mix it?
Well, it goes as you suggested it went. However, because we're now touring with other guests, we barely scratch the surface of singing our hits. I mean, when we do a show, there are about four hits that I had that I don't sing, and they are namely Ragamuffin Man, My Name is Jack, Semi-Detached, and I'm sure there's one other, but I can't think of it. But I do get to, we basically made a decision about what, and it's the same for Paul. Obviously, he sings Do-Or-Diddy, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and Pretty Flamingo, and obviously I sing The Mighty Quinn. We decided after Farlow's just left the stage to tumultuous applause that we needed something pretty over the top to be able to compete. So I sing Ha Ha, said the clown, and I have a great affection for Just Like a Woman, because it was my first record, and if I look back on it, I think it's my best vocal after Invitation. And I think that Fox on the Run almost qualifies in the realms of R&B. It's got a little bit of soul in it. But the other ones that I mentioned, My Name is Jack, Ragamuffin Man, and Semi-Detached, don't get a look in on this show. But when we do a purely Manfred show, it'll be Paul sing a song, me sing a song, him sing a song, Tom McGuinness sing a song, because he had his McGuinness Flint hits. Gallagher, Benny has his Gallagher Lyle hits. So Tom gets one song on our current show, and Benny Gallagher gets one song. I get four. In fact, I sing Build Me Up Buttercup, because we know that it goes down so well, and it's a very good, what's the opposite to sequel? Prequel, you might be able to say, to Do Our Diddy. And after Paul gets the note in his head, it's a semitone down, I sing, Don't Break My Heart. And he goes, there she was, and it's very strong. And that's the reason we do Build Me Up Buttercup. It wasn't a Manfred hit, but it actually gives me good, it helps set up, it gets us into top gear for the final part of the show.
Well, thank you for the music. Keep writing the music, Mike, and we wish you every success with this tour. From all our listeners on the Record Collectors.
Well, I've enjoyed chatting to you, and just keep playing the records, whether it's me as writer or singer or indeed the Manfreds, you know, and come and see the show.